Daniel Bongino. Welcome to the Right Hook.
Bongino. Yeah, how are you?
Good. How are you this morning?
Well, good. Busy week, so this has been an interesting day for me. I got my daughter's birthday party, so it's been my first day off the campaign trail in about a month. So I'm looking forward to it.
You know, it's not much of a day off, but at least it'll be relaxing.
Yeah, it will be. There's nice weather down here in Maryland today too. It's pretty warm. We had a ridiculous cold streak this week, so yeah, perfect weather.
Yeah. Well, we usually start off all of our first-time guests with the same two-part question: who are you, and just why the hell do you want to run for the U.S. Senate?
Well, listen, we need real leaders. You know, it's from real people who've led real lives with real consequences. You know, people talk about the incumbency disease all the time, but you find that very few people are willing to do anything about it. And I was a Secret Service agent. I was living a pretty good life. I had a very secure job with the U.S. government, and I just felt like people were entitled to the truth from a real individual, again, with a real leadership resume who led a real life with real consequences. And a lot of these insulated bourgeoisie-type politicians have no consequence to their lives whatsoever. So any of their policy making is nearly irrelevant for them. It's only relevant to us. So that's why I jumped in. I thought this was a great opportunity to get that message out there.
Yeah. And you're actually one of the most interesting backgrounds out of most of the people who decide to run for office. Generally got a lot of lawyers, some businessmen, the occasional doctor. You're formerly from the New York Police Department, I believe, and a former Secret Service agent.
That's right.
Drawing on that background, how do you think that'll make you an effective leader in the Senate?
Well, that's a forced leadership background. You know, a lot of folks tend to discuss leadership as some esoteric quality, but in the Secret Service and in the Police Department, those are forced qualities. In other words, if you don't have them, you have to move on and find another position, especially with the Secret Service towards the end, where I was one of the few Secret Service agents who had the background to do lead advances, meaning you could go to a foreign country and represent the United States as the official security representative on the ground. You're overseeing a military apparatus, a Secret Service apparatus, certain presidential staff functions. So it's really it's a profound responsibility. And those are the kind of jobs where the Secret Service has no room for error. They don't tolerate fools. You either do it or you move on. And that's where I really excelled, and that's the kind of leadership we need. People, again, who've had lives with real consequences. And, you know, so legislation actually matters to them. And I just don't see that. You know, my 12 years surrounded by politics and, you know, in and around the White House and the Capitol. So I think this is an opportunity for someone like myself to fit nicely into the Republican caucus.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, I know you and your wife both run a number of successful small businesses. And unless there's like a miracle and the unemployment rate drops to 5% this year, the big campaign issue is going to be jobs, a little bit on the economy, and more jobs. What do you think the Washington needs to be doing, if anything, to help create jobs so people can actually get back to work? Well,
I think I know what you're saying, and please don't take this the wrong way, but Washington doesn't create jobs. I know you know that. It's just we view the parlance as thrown around so often that we all incorporate it into our lingo without even thinking about it. Washington does nothing to create jobs. You know, I get the question all the time, what are you going to do for small business? And my response is the same every time. It's not what I'm going to do for small business in the Senate. It's what small business is going to do for itself and what I'm going to do to get the U.S. Senate out of your way. It's not what I'm going to do. Now, in regards to policies that can assist in doing that, we have a multi-part plan, and I hate multi-part plans, but the reality is if you're running for the U.S. Senate, you have to have some good, tangible meat and potatoes that people can grab onto. Tax reform, simplification, flatter and broader. Energy policy. In Maryland, we have $50 billion in natural gas we haven't touched. Again, it's all talk. They're not serious about jobs. The Dems here, they're just serious about talking. A balanced budget amendment is something I support. When we're talking about scoring our budget, we have to change it from the current static analysis to a dynamic analysis. The way we score our budget now is absurd. That's why we're inaccurate every single time. The CBO hasn't been accurate one time when it comes to the repercussions of tax policy on business. And also a regulatory review. Listen, Sarbox and Dodd-Frank, can we acknowledge in a nonpartisan fashion that they have not had the consequences we initially intended? That's not a partisan issue. Just look at the numbers. No company is IPOing here anymore. They're not, because they don't want to deal with the repercussions of Starbucks. No one's saying we don't need any regulation in business. No one's saying that. We're just saying let's make it fair and predictable. So those 5 points I just gave you on the economy, those are things we can do right away to start to remove the government from your private entrepreneurial life and let this economy take off like a rocket ship. It's not what I'm going to do. It's what you're going to do.
And I'm always fascinated and enjoy talking to, as much as I hate breaking things down, the red state, blue state, for lack of a better phrase, other blue state Republicans, because everything you just said to me is preaching to the choir. Unfortunately, most of the people who we live with that will have to go vote, they don't seem to get it. And Maryland's an interesting state because you're just on the border of the southern states where people tend to go more Republican. When you're out on the campaign trail, how do you make that case to voters to where, they'll actually listen and give you a shot in the Senate?
Great question, and I'm really glad you asked that because we get this question often, and it comes in various forms. How are you going to get the insert random group here vote? Black vote, Hispanic vote, young vote, the soccer mom vote, constituencies that traditionally have leaned Democrat. And I give the same answer every time. It's not one issue. It's a bevy of issues that the liberal wing of the Democrat Party, and I don't call them the Democratic Party, the Democrat Party, have supported that don't align with their values. I'll give you an example. Prince George's County in Maryland, Baltimore City. 2 areas where Republicans are told all the time by Democrats, conveniently, they're told, don't campaign there. They will never vote for you. They. Who's they, number one? There's no they. There's just us. What do you mean they? Secondly, I bring up to you, in those areas, school choice is an issue of enormous importance to these folks. The good citizens of Baltimore City and Prince George's County are sent to these failure factories we call schools. By force, by the way, by government fiat. They can't choose. That matters to them. They are entitled to a shot at the American dream. We talk about entitlements a lot. That's an entitlement. The good citizens of Baltimore City and Prince George's County are entitled to a shot. I grew up poor. This isn't a sob story. I grew up poor. I grew up eating bologna and Cheerios for dinner. We had no money. I was an inner city kid. What got me out of it and how I escaped was a good quality education by fantastic teachers. And why are the citizens of Baltimore City and Prince George's County not entitled to the same shot that both you and I had? Can anybody explain that to me rationally without getting into special interests, unions, nonsensical arguments that make no sense? Bottom line, why can't those parents choose what schools their kids go to? Why? No one, when you get to the granular part of that issue, can answer that question. No one. It is insanity, and those are issues that resonate with the citizens there, and we can win them. Don't let the Democrats tell you, don't campaign there, you can't win. We can win. We can win. We have issues that resonate over there, and they're entitled to a shot too.
Mm-hmm. And what's been some when you campaign in areas like that? Has there been at least an open-minded response?
Absolutely. I'll give you an example, a tangible example, because stories, personal anecdotes. These are real life stories that have actually happened to me. Montgomery County, traditionally pretty heavily weighted towards Democrats. There tends to be a liberal bent to the county, but there's a lot of Republican votes there as well. I do parades down there often. I was on a parade route, the Potomac Parade, I guess about 3 months ago, and we gave out about 1,000 palm cards. And along the route, I was clogging up the whole parade route. By the way, I try to shake as many hands as I can. They were largely Democrats. I think it was a Labor Day parade, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. It was largely a Democrat crowd. And I went down and shook everybody's hand and said the same thing every time. I said, I'm not a politician. I'm a Secret Service agent. I got fed up with it, too. Look at my ideas, not my party, please. And I'll tell you, at least 75, 80% of the people said, give me that palm card, and took it. And the next day we went in, we did our analytics program on our web traffic. We got about 1,000 unique visitors from people specifically in that area of Maryland saying that they not only went home and took the palm card, they scanned the QR code on it, and some of them went to the website and looked at the ideas. I'm not saying we're going to get every one of them, but we got them to open up and look at our ideas. These are not extremist agendas. What, fair? We're no one's saying we don't need to pay taxes. We're just saying they need to be fair and reasonable, and they need to work to grow our economy. And, people seem to conveniently forget that in the Reagan years, black-owned small businesses had the greatest levels of prosperity they've ever had. They conveniently leave that out in all their class warfare arguments. school choice initiatives, gas prices that are reasonable with our own energy development. These are regressive ideas that focus on lower income populations, not the rich. Gas prices don't really affect millionaires. They don't care. I mean, these are reasonable ideas, and I'm tired of people telling us that, we can't win. And you're up in New York, is that right? Up in New York,
yes.
In Maryland and Massachusetts, it's nonsensical. Scott Brown won on very centrist ideas of growth for everybody.
Okay, you are literally the first guest I've ever had that's brought up web analytics, and I know that one of your small businesses deals with web solutions. One of my biggest frustrations, and another frustration a lot of my fellow blogger friends, is that while we've made strides a lot with the GOP, they don't seem to get the bloggers or the concept of new media. I was wondering if you had your take on how the Republicans have been using social media, or how it's been beneficial to your specific campaign.
It's been my experience with. I can only talk about Maryland Republicans because I've been down here most of my adult life. We've been slow to incorporate social media strategies, web analytics, IT infrastructure, back end. My campaign has been very lucky. My campaign manager was a management operative in the Chris Christie campaign, and they did a fantastic job with micro-targeting, VoIP lines, web analytics, and things like that. That combined with my wife's small business knowledge on search engine optimization, analytics in the back end, we have had a technological advantage that has given us a boost in this campaign that, frankly, for a candidate who I entered 7 months ago, who 8 months ago no one had heard of, we have come a long way, and it's been said, we've been on Fox 7 or 8 times. That was our media strategy. I brought in the best young minds in the business here that have been on some very effective campaigns, and they've all liked the message and agreed to work for very cheap rates. So we have had a tremendous advantage. People tell us all the time, we have no business with all the attention we've gotten and all the money we've raised, given our status in the Republican Party before this, being total outsiders. But, the analytics matters. We do things like we'll talk about, natural gas development in Western Maryland when we have the Marcellus play. The next day I can go in and look at our website and find out how many people went to our website, how many were unique visitors, how many are paying repeat visits, what sections of the website they're clicking on. Then if they give us their email, say they clicked on energy development, we can then get them a blast email right away on energy development policies in Western Maryland. Or another example, we'll send one of our 800 volunteer army out to Prince George's County to knock on doors, heavily Democrat areas, say, what issues matter to you? They'll say, education choice. Well, what about it? School vouchers. We have a number of robocalls set up, and we have a number of blast emails on that matter where I stand. We'll get them an email right away. We'll say, hey, can we have your email? We'll get it that night. That's how the Christie campaign won by 6 or 7 points in a heavily blue state, and that's how we're doing it too. It's going to require a value-added technology service that other candidates aren't really doing right now, at least as I see it.
And switching to foreign policy and world issues for a minute, because I know because you were involved in the Secret Service, you actually, unlike most candidates, actually have some at least foreign travel experience. Because when you were in the Secret Service, you were I think the front man during some overseas trips.
A number of them.
Looking at the general national security landscape, what's your take on how the Obama administration has been for both for national security and foreign policy? And you're elected U.S. Senate in January. What are some things you think we need changing?
Well, there's so many areas of foreign policy to touch on. You have China right now. You have Egypt, Afghanistan. You have Iraq. There are so many different areas. I spoke yesterday on the radio here, on local radio, about China. We had kind of a lightning round on the radio, and they brought up China. And they said, well, Donald Trump is talking about imposing tariffs on China. And I said, folks, listen. That's populist rhetoric. I love Donald Trump. I really do. He's a very successful businessman. I actually met him a couple times at the U.S. Open up in New York. But imposing tariffs on China right now to make products sold here, because that's really what it is. They're not all Chinese products. A lot of the imports we have from China, when you break up the global value chain, are really products that are only 20% made in China and 80% made in the United States. They're shipped back and forth. That's how the global value chain works now, the supply chain breakdown. So it's mislabeling the process made in China. It's not. So we'll get these products in here, and they're cheap. these cheap products benefit low-income citizens. Again, the citizens of Baltimore City, Prince George's County, certain areas of Western Maryland. So to make those products more expensive, I ask folks like that who preach mercantilism, how is that going to help our economy? And they say, well, it's going to drive manufacturing jobs back home. No, it's not going to do that. It's going to drive them to Vietnam is what it's going to do. I assure you, I've done a detailed study on these macroeconomic issues. There's zero chance that's going to happen. What's going to drive manufacturing jobs back home is reductions in our capital gains tax, our corporate tax rates, our tax code, a flattening and broadening of it, a loosening of unnecessary redundant regulations. That's what's going to bring manufacturing. We can build things here. We always have. We can build the best products in the world. But I say all the time, do we want to be the capital of rubber dog toys? Or do we want to be the capital of machines that make rubber dog toys? That's what we do in America. That's what our minds and our hands build. So that to me right now on the economic front is the biggest foreign policy issue is our dealings with China. And we have to fix their method of government procurement. They're stealing a lot of our intellectual property. But if they want to work cheaply for us to create cheap products, we should let them do it. No economic studies ever shown otherwise that making products more expensive in the United States is going to somehow benefit us. So that's a touch on the economic front.
And just before Christmas break, they had the issue in D.C. With the payroll tax cut extension.
Sure.
Originally, it was I think the president wanted a year extension with the millionaire's tax cut. The House said we'll give you the year, but no millionaire's tax cut. Senate dropped it to 2 months. The House said no. It was a big blow up, but they finally did one of those D.C. deals where everyone goes home miserable, and they're going to come back in January and start fighting again.
Sure. Always. So they do best.
If you're in the U.S. say you're in the U.S. Senate this January,